Right. Hello and welcome to Anmol's Advice, episode 3. Now, today we have another guest, and you might know him from some of his celebrity interviews that he does with Anton or Georgia or any of the other Islanders, or you might know him from his Big Brother reunions that he does with all the housemates from different series, or you might just know him as an overall round nice guy. Please welcome Mr. Lewis Nicholls. Hello, Lewis.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me on.
Oh, no problem. Do you know what? I'm so excited to do this interview actually. This is the one I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. And it's just so lovely to have people who are going to be doing the interview, but this time it's going to be me doing it for a change. So you must feel a bit
I
odd
know I'm
about that.
nervous. I'm nervous.
Oh, that's great. Don't, but well, not great, but don't be nervous because you'll be absolutely, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you'll be absolutely
Nervous.
smashing this. Right. So we're going to start with interviews. Now, I know you've interviewed some massive, massive names. We're talking big, we're talking reality TV stars. So, what would be your favorite interview and why, if you had to choose?
That I've done so far.
Yeah.
So there's two that stand out. So one of them was Craig Revel-Horwood, who's the judge from Strictly, because
No
I
way.
yeah, and I we met in Oxford, and I had this preconception of what he would be like, and he came in, and honestly, he is nothing like what you see on the TV. He was the most down to earth, kind hearted, but really quite emotionally like he just like showed his emotion. He didn't hide anything. And we did this interview, and he opened up about the death of his father. He opened up about his bond with the late Sir Bruce Forsyth. And I remember after we did the interview, I was like, wow, I didn't expect that at all. So him and also Martin Clunes, the actor, was the nicest without a doubt.
From Doc Martin, right?
Yeah, we met in Cornwall. I brought my little French bulldog as well, and he was playing with him. But he was just so nice. And after the interview, he said that is one of the most well-researched interviews I've ever done. And he was just so generous with his time. He let me and my partner at the time look around the studio and the sets, and that was just incredible to go behind the scenes. So yeah, Craig Revel-Horwood and Martin Clunes.
Oh, that's so cool. And obviously, interviewing celebrities, that must be like a massive, massive task. So I can imagine lots of research goes into it.
Mm. Yeah, do you know what? You've got to. There's no. I've watched interviews, and you've probably done it as well, where
Yeah.
it might be on ITV or something, and there's no research in it, and you sit there and you think, oh my God, you've got. I think I watched Brian May from Queen before, and they had one question, and the interviewer said, "How do you get your hair like that?" And I thought, you've got one of the biggest artists of all time, and you've asked him about his hair. So I think research is so key in an interview because you've got to give that guest something they've never had before. So you probably know that yourself. It's you've got to really put the work in.
Yeah, I do. Because obviously, being a uni student, research is absolutely vital and it's absolutely key
Mm.
because you cannot make a statement without backing it up. And if you don't back up the evidence, then you're in real trouble
Yeah,
because you're making simply an accusation that, might not be even there or might not even exist. We're just making a statement,
exactly.
which could be your opinion. So that leads me on to my next question. How did you get interviewing? How did you get into interviewing, I should say?
Uh, it was basically I used to work in a sweet shop when I think I was 15 years old, and they came in to interview my boss about local business and stuff. Uh, and I asked the person who was interviewing questions and asked if I could come to the studio, and they like more to kind of excite me. They said, "Look, come into the studio. We'll let you say one thing." And I did that. I did a link. I remember the song. It was Nick Kershaw, an 80s pop star, and I had to do a link for a song, and they turned around to me and said, "Wow, like you've got a voice for radio." So I started when I was 15 years old, but I hated radio. I did it for about 8 9 years, but my
Yeah.
passion is in person.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, radio is so nerve-wracking because like you've got to talk and you've got to present to like literally the whole world. And presenting I can
I don't have
understand
that
is
many viewers.
oh, bless you. But I can imagine that, interviewing, sorry, radio is very, very
Mhm.
nerve-wracking. But
No, yeah, it wasn't the nerves either. It was for me. It was so when I interview someone, I have to see them so I can get a gauge of their reaction and
I get
how
that.
they feel about it. But with it was all telephone interviews, and I just couldn't work out anything from the guest. And so it was when the Cornwall channel came calling in 2016, and they gave me my first. It was on Sky TV, and it was Andrew Ridgeley from Wham, and it was my first television appearance, and that for me changed it because the excitement of being in a studio and seeing yourself on the screens and having a crew that was so passionate about what they were doing. Like the guy from the Cornwall channel, Shane Solomon, changed my life with giving me that opportunity. Yeah.
Do you have do you have like any tips on interviewing?
You've got to be genuinely interested. I think if it ever becomes a chore, that's when it's not the right thing. But you have to be really passionate. So, say for instance, if I interview an artist and they've got a new album out, if I can't connect to that album in some way, I tend not to do the interview. But if I connect to say the lyrics or a certain track and I'm passionate enough, I'll get them on for an interview because I can do them a service with that. But where if I interview someone I have no interest, no respect, I don't like the project, that for me is a chore and that I don't enjoy that at all. So I tend to step away from stuff like that.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I can. That leads me on to my next question. So, background and history. Now, let's talk about growing up. So, what was growing up like?
Nice. I had a really, really good childhood. My mum and dad were really supportive and I grew up in Cornwall. Not much opportunities down there for me at that time, but I lived in a really nice estate called Trenier, and everyone, it was such a community. You see on TV sometimes how the community sticks together. It
Yeah.
was like that there. And yeah, I had a really good childhood. I was always quite loud. I always wanted to be a presenter. I used to record my own little tapes and pretend I was a radio DJ, and I'd be like, coming up next is the brand new, and I'd do my own little thing. Uh, and then yeah, I just dreamed of being a presenter and interviewer. So I had a really good childhood. I was a bit of the class clown in school. My reports always said Lewis, such a nice guy, but likes to play the class clown. So I had that a lot.
What about teenagerhood? I think
Oh
that's a word, or is it just one that I've
yeah,
invented?
it was good. When I became a teenager, especially 18, I was always out partying with my friends in like nightclubs on a Saturday. But I was always well behaved. I never got in trouble. I wasn't naughty in any way. I was just quite. I was always very driven because when I was 18, I was presenting on radio and doing interviews. Like, I mean, I was having about four celebrities a week, so
Wow.
I was very driven with that. So my focus from that teenager was just presenting and stuff like that. So yeah, I did. Some of my friends kind of tell me their stories. Like, yeah, I did this, got in trouble with that, and that was so far apart from me. But that was purely because I was interviewing and my passion was that. So yeah, I was very well behaved.
Would you describe your radio life, like when you were a teenager, work experience, or would you say it's a full-time
Yeah.
job?
No work experience, 100%. It wasn't a full time job. I had a full time job. I was working in a sunbed shop. So yeah, it wasn't a It was definitely good. That's good observation. It was definitely work experience because I didn't. I look back at some of my interviews from when I was 18 and I take them off my YouTube because I know I could do so much better now, and I cringe when I hear some of the questions that I asked or how like I don't know about you, but sometimes when you listen to what a guest says, you can follow up with a question. And
Yeah.
when I listen back at some of my interviews, I missed so many opportunities where I think, oh my God, why didn't you ask her that? Or why didn't you ask him this? So yeah, definitely work experience.
And then you want to do it again, isn't it? Like a part two of the
Yeah,
interview.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes it doesn't work like that. I've tried to get certain guests back on and it's never happened. And one of them is Adam Ant, the 80s pop star. And I interviewed him, and I know I could do so much better now, but the opportunities never come back. Um, so yeah, I've missed so many opportunities by just being when you're younger and you've just started, you don't have the experience that I have now. So when I was 18, I'm not as experienced as I was, I would say I am now. So it's a learning curve. I just hope I get the opportunity to get them back. And also the awkward thing is my voice was a lot higher because I don't think I hit puberty so much later. So when I listen back, I sound like Aled Jones when he's singing "Walking in the Air." So I listen back, I'm like, no, like I don't sound like me anymore.
It's cringy, isn't it? I remember when I did YouTube videos when I was younger, and oh my God, the screechiness in my voice was ridiculous. But I guess, as you grow up, your voice does get deeper. But because I have a condition, obviously, mine doesn't happen like that, I guess. But I can't speak for everyone else. But how did you feel, when you watched and listened to it back?
Oh, I cringed. And it was more not unprofessionalism, but for instance, I interviewed Louis Theroux did this big documentary on a family called the Westboro Baptist Church. Um, and I interviewed a member of the Westboro Baptist Church, and basically their whole thing is they're just the most homophobic, racist family in America. And I interviewed them, and basically when I listen back, I think the woman who I interviewed completely owned me because she was way more informed than I was.
Yeah.
And I listen back now and I know for a fact I could completely handle that in a different way. And I think I would come out on top. But when I listen back, she was way more informed, way more educated than I was. And I feel, came out on top in that interview.
And were you prepared for that interview?
No, it was one of those. I jumped on the bandwagon. Louis Theroux did it. It was big at the time. So I was like, that was something I did for the wrong reasons. Now, when I interview people, it's because I'm passionate. But back then, it was who would get me the views, who would get me in the paper, who would get the most people talking. So I did it for the completely wrong reason. And it shows because it didn't really go well. Made me look just completely uninformed. So yeah, that was a learning curve.
I guess when you're, younger, you kind of do these things to like, build up followers, build up, you know, website website approaches and
Mm,
all that sort of stuff. But, when you grow up, you look back on it and you think, I wish I didn't do that. But I
yeah.
think you kind of see it as like a great lesson, to like never do that again.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's discuss advice. Do you have any advice for people who want to get into interviewing or celebrity interviewing or just becoming like a presenter overall?
Well, in I don't think I'm the best presenter myself. So in regards to interviewing, I'd say you've got to do it for the right reasons, and be informed. If I know if you interview someone and you haven't done the research, that guest will be very dismissive with you. They won't give you a lot. And I've had that before. I've had people on the show, and I can tell like there's been times before, especially with radio, you'd get 15 minutes notice. They'd say, oh, can you quickly jump on the phone with Joey Essex or Mark Wright? And you jump on and you've got such a limited time to get the questions. And then when you do and you put it to them, they feel like, hang on a minute, I've been asked this yesterday. This is the most generic interview I've done. So that puts them off and it creates this barrier. So I would say, don't rush it, put research in, but be passionate because I love a show called Two Doors Down. It's a comedy show on BBC, and it's my favorite show. And I've been lucky enough to interview nearly basically all of the cast, and I get on well with them because I think they can feel my passion for the show and how well informed I am. And as an interview for them, they think, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. Whereas if I interview someone and I haven't done research, they will definitely know. And there's been loads. There's been quite a few I've interviewed where I will openly say I didn't do the research I should have done. I was overwhelmed with the amount of people I had to interview. I just didn't get the time.
I can understand, not doing the research bit because like when you talk to a guest, it's kind of embarrassing if you know what I mean. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what happens next? What do I say next? And it's kind of like those awkward silences and those awkward moments. So how do you not create those situations?
How do you not create them?
Yeah. Like how do you try and avoid
So
them?
So for me, I said yes to every email I had. Do you want to? Yeah, yeah, I'll interview it. Yeah, I'll get them on my show. That's what I would say. Don't do that. Don't say yes to every situation, because all that does is you get overwhelmed. You're then like, there's one day I will never forget. During lockdown, I had 8 interviews to do in one day, and they
Wow.
only confirmed the day before. So that's 8 lots of research. And I remember I was having people like Beverly Knight on the show, some really big names, and I just thought, oh, I'm not giving them the time that I should. And I watch back now, and you can tell. I mean, they're good interviews, but I know if I stuck to one guest per day, so my to not get in that situation is don't overbook and don't have too many in one day.
Yeah, because I can
Yeah.
imagine it causes quite a lot of stress.
Yeah, it was so horrible because you just know you're doing a disservice to that person. And when you've got what one research I know I did really well was Matt Goss, who's in Bros years ago,
And
the 80s
Strictly.
band. And yeah, that's right. And I did so much research with that. And I remember at the end of the interview, he said to me, "That's one of the best interviews I've ever done." He said, "Honestly, you killed it with that question." He kept saying, he was like, "Wow, like what a good question." And that's when you know you've done something well, when a guest will say that to you, because they've done interviews hundreds of times. So for them to actually say that, um, you know, you so yeah, that's what I'd say to that one.
And of course, I like me and you both share a passion for reality TV. Can you just explain a
Yes.
bit about the lives with Anton that you do?
Yeah, so with Anton, I interviewed Anton, I think in 2019 or 2020, and Anton's one of those people where he is so honest. I cannot say enough how real that man is, and how down to earth he is. He's got the purest heart, purest soul, and he introduced me to his mum, who I've been doing the lives with, and just Sherry Ann as well, his mum. I've never connected with someone like I've connected with her. I mean, she has just got this ability to make me cry with laughter. And the whole family, his dad, Michael, they're just the nicest people. So Anton, but said, "Would you like to do some lives every night with my mum when I'm on Love Island, and just talk about the show and engage with people?" So we did it. We didn't know how it was going to go or how it was going to work. And it turned out it worked really well. And, to watch him in there and then go live was such a good experience. And we built like a little community now, me and Sherry Ann. And, Anton, when he came out, he could have gone to a magazine with the first interview, but the first live he did was with me. And since he's come out, he's made sure that I've been invited to do, like, I'm going on with Hannah. I went on with Georgia, as well. So he's been so loyal back, and that's testament to who he is as a person. He doesn't forget, and that literally goes through his family. If you do something for them, they never forget it. They're not selfish in any way.
And were you a Love Island
So yeah,
fan? Sorry, were you a Love Island fan before you met Anton?
no, I didn't watch Love. I didn't watch Anton's original series.
Really?
Um, yeah, I got Anton on because I liked the fitness side that he
And I
did.
did. I watched his original
Yeah.
series.
Oh, so I haven't watched it. I was liking the fitness stuff that he did. And so that's why I got him on. But yeah, obviously this Love Island was, I think, the first I've watched bits, but it was the first series I watched all the way through. And I think a lot of people would agree he was the standout for me, anyways. As a man, he was just so real and sincere.
Yeah, and you know what? I found that this series, in 2019, I found that he's changed quite a lot. And
Yeah.
the way that he was to Georgia, like he was actually so nice. Like, the way he planned things
Yeah.
for her, that's a proper relationship. And, when they did that, challenge where they put up on the podiums like first, second, third, I don't think they
Yeah.
deserve to go there at all because, they were just keeping it real. Love Island is that place, where you can easily just, fall off the wagon in your relationship.
Yeah.
And then that's it,
100%.
it comes rolling, rolling, rolling in. And then the press start writing about you. But I want to know, have the press ever written about you in an interview?
Loads. Always. They watched a lot of the stuff I've done. I remember I interviewed Anne Hegarty from The Chase, and I asked her a question. I said, "Oh, what are your thoughts on the new Chaser?" And all she said to me was, oh, well, when you add another chaser into the mix, we get paid per episode. So another chaser means less episodes. That's all she said. The next day, I woke up, the Sun paper, it was the Sun, OK Magazine, the Mirror, loads of them, Anne Hegarty in furious pay row with ITV. And they had used our video that we did and made this whole thing like she was kicking off about it. It was terrible. I had it with Craig Revel Horwood as well.
You mentioned at the beginning.
They quoted yeah, no, they quoted that in the Sun, not in a positive way. I've had it recently actually, but in a good way with Amazon and Georgia. They watched our live and they did an article. But yeah, there's been loads. I mean, all obviously the Waterloo Road reunion I did that
I
made it
love
in
that.
there. The Bad Girls. Oh, you watched it?
I watched it. I watched it.
Nice.
Even though I didn't watch the series growing up, I watched some of it, like little
Yeah,
bits here and there. But I really didn't enjoy watching it because like the characters now who I know, like for example, Angela Griffin, she was
yeah,
the youngest student, I believe, and now she's grown up to be the head teacher. And for example, Adam Thomas as well, he's been through the same process. So it's kind of nice to see how they've all developed and how they've changed their characters to now. And how did you find that interview in the Waterloo Road one?
that was the hardest project to get together because I had 22 cast members, but to get 22 people, especially celebrities, at the same time remotely was so difficult. It was during lockdown and it was just such hard work. And it got to a stage where some people that I didn't know were coming on came on, but that to get people like Angela Griffin, Chelsea Healy, and some Philip Martin Wright, all the big cast members, I was so shocked that they came on because I just didn't expect it at all. Philip Martin Brown, sorry, I got the name wrong, but yeah, I was so shocked to get so many, and it went huge. I mean, I remember Chelsea Healy agreed to come on, and I shared it that all these cast members came on, and the Sun did an article. Chelsea Healy returns to Waterloo Road, and it became so popular that 6 months later, surprisingly, the BBC announced Waterloo Road was coming back.
So you made
Um,
that happen, really?
I don't know. It's really tricky. Some of the cast say so. So some of the people that came on a reunion said that would never have happened. And I had some cast that didn't do the reunion that went back onto Waterloo Road. Actually, say mate, this was on you, but you'll never know. But a lot of people watched it. It was covered by a lot of the press, and the interaction was huge. So I would like to think it was part of the reason, but I'll never know.
Just quickly, have you watched the new series?
Yes, and I'll be completely honest with you, I don't like it. I watched one series all the way through, and it just lost 2 minutes for me, and it just didn't flow as well. I love the show. I was a massive fan, but they just lost. I think if they didn't kill off the characters, Grantley and Tom Clarkson, I think it would have been good if they were back, but because they were killed off on the show, it
Yeah,
just didn't flow well.
I can see what you mean because like once it's a reboot, it just doesn't work, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
Some
was gutted,
shows,
but it's still on. I mean,
yeah,
it was
it's
recently
going
announced that
well.
is it?
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
they've announced the second series with new characters already. I think it's like the third one they've announced in
Okay.
just 2 years. All right,
Good. Yeah.
so
Rating there.
yeah, so let's finish off with some sentences. So, my proudest moment is,
Oh, what am I most proud of? My proudest moment is oh, I'll be honest, overcoming mental health issues. Because there are times I didn't think I would. That I've really struggled with certain things. I mean, there was one year I got divorced. My gran died. I had to sell my house because of the divorce. And
oh
then my dog,
wow.
I had to. So much happened in the short amount of time. I was like, oh, this is too much. But so I'd say my proudest moment is overcoming like a bad mental health episode.
And I can relate to that. I can relate to that. Um, Next one. I feel motivated when.
I feel motivated when people compliment my interview technique. So not necessarily, oh, I love that interview with so, but if they say the questions you asked were so good, or I loved it when you managed to get that from the guests. When they compliment my work, it motivates me so much.
And finally, what would Lewis say to his younger self right now? If you could look back, what would you say to your younger self?
Definitely don't rush. Don't go in head first all the time, and just assess a little bit more and say, why are you doing it? Because most of the time I'll say, actually, I don't know. I think I'm just interviewing that person because they've been on a big TV show. So it would actually question myself more. Why are you doing it? Do you actually want to do it for the right reasons, or is it purely just to get some views? And I think my show would have been a lot different if I'd done that.
Oh, Lewis, thank you so much for this interview. I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it as well. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolute legend. I can't wait to see what's coming next year because I know we're gonna I'm gonna message some
Yeah.
people for you. But
And
you've done really well.
we can keep in contact
100%.
regularly. Yeah, 100%.
Definitely.
All right then. Stay on for a bit because I want to talk to you a little
Of
bit
course.
after. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
And that's interview done. Uh,
Legend, thank you.
oh, stop.